Good evening, everyone. We're about to start this meeting of the Sumner County Board of Education for July 20th, I almost said September, July 20th, 2021. Before we do, I'm going to stand for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag. Anyone who would like to join me, please feel free to do so. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we call this meeting to order. Second item on the agenda is roll call. Mr. Johnson, I'm sure you have the roll.
Yes, sir.
All righty then, we got a couple of absent tonight, but we will try to go on without them. Next item on the agenda is adoption of the regular agenda. Motion to approve by Mr. Wise.
Second.
Second by Ms. Bachman. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is adoption of the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve? So moved by Ms. Hayes.
Second.
Second by Mr. Wilkerson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is consideration of minutes, discussion and or action regarding the minutes of the June 15th, 2021 regular meeting. Motion approved by Mr. Wise, second by Mr. Gregory. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is recognition and hearing the delegations. And we had a couple of people sign up to speak tonight for general reports from the director. That's we generally do voting items on the agenda, so that would not qualify. So I apologize to you for that. But hopefully we'll say some things that'll be nice and good. Next item on the agenda is reports from the matters involving council. We don't have matters involving council. Next item on the agenda is reports from the director, Dr. Phillips.
All right, good to see y'all. Wanted to cover a couple of things tonight. The first, I'll go ahead and have JJ hand out FAQ questionnaire that we felt like parents were kind of all asking in regard to opening of school. Last year we did the reentry plan because obviously everything was had changed in our world, and we were trying to determine a number of things, comply with the law, changes in the law, waivers, a number of things that we were doing last year that this year, for a variety of reasons, probably won't be the case. So we knew parents wanted this information. We knew we were getting really pretty close to the start of school. Felt like it was best to share this with you guys. We did go over this same questionnaire with principals this morning. We told them, of course, things could change depending on feedback from the board, but we felt like we were headed in a good direction to give them some updates about how we were going to handle the management of things within the school year as we get ready to start here in a couple of weeks. So as we've done in the past, when we put information out for parents, sometimes it's easier to understand if it's in a question and answer format. So we just try to think through, take feedback and think through what questions maybe parents are needing an answer to get ready to prepare for the start of school. I will say too that the principals at each location, each building, will also be sharing information about first of school and kind of how that's going to look at their school campus, and we talked about that this morning as well. So in front of you, you have a 2-page kind of front and back that we plan to share with parents, principals first, and then parents tomorrow We'll do that through all of the normal channels that we share information, but then we'll also have principals resend that the way that they communicate with parents as well. So we can make sure that we try to get this in the hands of parents. So a lot of these you will see kind of follow the same format as last year, where we're talking about everything from face coverings to visitors to schools. A lot of those same types of headings that we used in the reentry plan last year, we've tried to go through and make sure that we answer. So I'm just going to go through these one at a time, and then we can have a discussion about them. You guys can ask questions. I'll try to give a little bit of detail around why we came to that conclusion as we go through them. The first one, will Sumner County Schools require students or staff to wear face coverings? The answer to that, students and staff will not be required to wear face coverings on buses or in school buildings. However, they may wear face coverings if they choose to do so. That's very similar to how we operated outside of the local mandate last year within the school system. It's how we started, and once the mandate took over inside the county, then we changed to comply with the mandate, and then at the end we kind of did this again. So one slight change here is we did last year require masks on buses across the board, but this year it'll be optional. If a student wants to do that, or a staff member, they can, but they're not mandated to do so. The second one, will Sumner County Schools be requiring proof of COVID-19 vaccination of students or staff in order to attend school? And this is something I think that's come through multiple channels to us, with people just trying to figure out, especially on the adult side, if that's going to be the case. And of course the answer is students and staff will not be required to show proof of COVID-19 vaccination to attend school. Will Sumner County Schools be performing temperature checks on students daily? You know, last year we did that as part of our reentry plan, which was something obviously that was very different for us to do. So this year we tried to respond so parents knew that we're kind of going back to where we were at prior to COVID. So if a student presents that they're ill, whether that's with COVID symptoms or stomach bug or whatever, then those students would be sent, or that student would be sent to the school nurse, evaluated, and then parents contacted about next steps. Will Sumner County Schools be conducting contact tracing? Last year we did do contact tracing inside the school system, but that was not our function as prescribed by the law. We were doing that to try and help with the identification and prompt notification, because we knew that the health department just really didn't have the resources at that time, especially early on, to do the volume of contact tracing. They were going to have to contact us to get the information to then contact parents of students when they did do the contact tracing. So we kind of were taking that load off of them. So the last couple of weeks of last school year, if you remember, we went back to letting the health department do contact tracing, and that's the way it's been throughout the summer, and that's what will happen as we start the school year. So the Tennessee Department of Health will provide contact tracing for all residents, all Sumner County residents. We encourage students and staff to follow the recommendation or their health care provider, or the Tennessee Department of Health. Will there be restrictions on sports and extracurricular activities? You know, last year we had every season, every sport had a restriction, and this year, just like last year, we'll follow whatever TSSAA tells us to do. That's where the restrictions and the modifications came from last year. They sent those out to everyone. This year, I do not believe that they will have restrictions on attendance at games, or at least they have not shared that with us yet. And so I think That probably will not happen. So we're anticipating that those restrictions for attendance and other things that were in place mandated by TSSAA will not be in place as we start sports seasons here very soon, okay, for fall sports. Extracurricular activities. Each building typically, you guys know this, they have some things that they do specific to their building for extracurricular, whether that's in the elementary, middle, or high school. What I told principals, we're going to try to do those as close to normal as possible. So that goes kind of along with visitors in schools. Last year we tried to restrict that, and also probably not do some of the things we've done typically, traditionally over time, with some grandparent days, with eating lunch with your child, Thanksgiving meal with your child, those kind of things. We tried to limit that last year. This year we're going to go back to allowing those things to happen. Some of our larger schools were already split up on multiple days, many days out of the week or the week preceding. So they were used to having multiple events. So you could still see some of those types of things, which will help with crowds. But we're going to try to go back to as many of those activities as possible as we start the school year. The next one kind of follows along with that. Will visitors be allowed in school buildings this year? Visitors to schools will be allowed according to our policy for visitors to schools. So we just reference our own policy there about how we allow visitors onto our campuses. Will Sumner County Schools have the ability to implement a district-wide hybrid or remote schedule this year? Which that was new for us last year. It was new for probably every school district, I'm sure. And so the answer to that is, by State Board of Education policy, hybrid or remote schedules are only permitted after a state of emergency has been declared by the governor. The 1st of July, I think, the State Board passed this rule. And really, last year when we were able to vote on all of those waivers, the resolution waiver, last year before we started school, when we did the reentry plan, you guys approved all of those and we submitted them to the state. Those were all waivers the state was allowed to give school districts to do remote and hybrid instruction based on COVID. Those all had an expiration. They expired at the end of the year, so July the 1st, the state reworked that, and they basically have said the only way that you can do those things are after the governor declares a state of emergency. And so really, if that were to happen, then we would come back to the table with you guys and make some changes, but hopefully that won't be the case. And then you get into a little bit more detail that we did, kind of like we did last year in the reentry plan. What if my student is tested positive for COVID-19? And we kind of walk through what would happen there. It would be very similar to the process that we have if they were ill previous to COVID. You'll contact the attendance office at your school. Then the school nurse will contact you, get information that we need, and then pass that along, of course, if necessary by law, to the local health department. And then Google Classroom will be available for those students that are out on quarantine, are tested positive, and are out serving their quarantine period. What happens if my child has been told to quarantine by the Tennessee Department of Health due to contact tracing, because they have been contact traced by TDOH? And there we just say to follow the recommendation of the health department or your local healthcare provider. In the same type of process, parents should contact your child's school, and we walk through that again in the answer. This one is one that I think parents had sent to us asking, and I think it's a good question that parents will have. May I choose to quarantine my child if I believe they were a close contact? So the health department didn't contact trace them, but maybe they go to church with a child that they know has COVID because of relationships with the family, and they've shared that information, and parents want to, just out of an abundance of safety, keep their student home for 4 or 5 days just to make sure that they don't become symptomatic and that type of thing. And here we've said, yes, absolutely, parents can choose to do that, and we'll honor that request. As long as they participate in Google Classroom, then they'll be able to be counted as present. And that way we can kind of keep them on track with their class and coursework during the small temporary amount of time that they're out. What if someone in my household tests positive for COVID-19? Here we say, families are encouraged to consult with their healthcare provider or TDOH on quarantine recommendations about that. I know from a medical perspective, I think they ask a lot of questions about contact. You obviously can't isolate from someone possibly that's in your home. And so they ask a lot of questions about that before they give them guidance about whether to quarantine or not. And then the last thing down there, what prevention measures will the district have in place this school year? And we try to go back through all of the things that we're doing as kind of a normal practice inside the school district now, that some were happened, some were elevated based on last year. Similar things to the cleaning protocols that we were using last year, the cleaning protocols on buses that we used all last year. All of those things will continue to be in place. Obviously, the quantity and distribution of hand sanitizer and those types of things to individual classrooms, we'll have that again this year, like last year. So all of those types of things will continue to stay in place, and we wanted to make sure that that parents knew that. So I'll be glad to answer questions. We tried to kind of narrow them down, and every specific question that a parent may ask, would be hard to put on an FAQ, but we tried to get the bulk of what we felt like was information that were the main driving questions for parents that we were hearing before we got to the first day of school. Like I said, the individual school buildings, they do this every year. Last year it was elevated, but they will also communicate with parents and guardians about their specific school prior to the first day of school.
All right. Ms. Brown?
Hi, I think this is great. If I were a parent or a teacher for that matter, I would want this to inform me. So I think it's great that you're getting ahead of it. I also wanted to note that down under the third dot under prevention measures, practicable. That needs to be changed.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yep. Good catch.
Ms. Andrews?
Yes, I just want to say thank you too for getting this together, because there have been several questions, and I know parents have been anxious with us getting close to the start of school to just kind of see as other districts have released their information. And we all know that this is a recommendation that is coming from your office. However, we also know that this is not something that you personally sat at your desk and came up with on your own. Can you kind of go through the process and who all you spoke with in order to kind of help formulate these decisions?
Yeah, well, obviously we get a lot of feedback from principals because they're the one out managing whatever we all decide. Just like we had that same discussion last year about masks and how to do that, and we got a lot of feedback from principals, especially high school and middle school, about how that would work. And so obviously we get input and feedback from them, which is a standard practice for us. And then, my particular team that's around me, we were part of developing the entry plan last year. Just kind of know the path of where we've been, what worked, what went well, what we changed throughout the year. They're a wealth of knowledge too, because we've already kind of lived through this. So I think this year the only change really has been, trying to evaluate where we're at as a community, kind of the lessons we learned from last year, how to keep some of those things, but also try to be back as close to normal as possible for students and for teachers and parents as well.
Were these conversations also, like, I know just on a normal basis that we have conversations with the leaders at our local hospitals, with Mr. Widener, who's over EMS, with the county health department and so forth. And I assume that those conversations are continuously happening and so forth. And so, again, that's kind of like,
Yep.
this is not just something within Sumner County Schools. Like, there's medical, and within your team as well. We have
Sure.
Ms. Herron, who
Yeah.
is well recognized and does a great job and is a healthcare provider. And so that, you know, also it puts within that, you know,
Yeah, I think
that
we're-
mindset, just so the parents know too, like, there is a medical expertise background that is also consulted within this as we move forward.
Yeah, and the one thing too about that, I think last year, I think there was probably more of those conversations last year, to be quite honest with you, than necessarily this year, because we're in a different situation today than we were a year ago today. But yes, that's an ongoing conversation that happens all the time. So, you know, Ms. Herron does a good job making sure that she stays in touch with predominantly healthcare providers at the hospitals and also the pediatrician offices. And then obviously we have close contact with our local health department and also EMA.
And the other question, just when we're talking about the cleaning protocols and all of that, those were also items that were included in this year's budget that we're going to, again, provide and distribute and so forth through Ms. York's department, and Andy, I think, helps with
Yep.
that and so forth. So that's, you know, something that not necessarily parents are going to have to provide. Obviously, if they want to provide extras, I'm sure schools and teachers will accept those with open arms, but that is something that is within our budget that we were conscious of to make sure that those were going to be provided throughout the year.
Yes, that's absolutely correct. So we were planning already, even back in March, April, prior to the end of last year, as we built the budget for this year. As you guys well know, we went ahead and included not only what we felt like we needed to do to have the same standard for supplies and cleaning, but also school supplies and other things that we did last year to try to put parents and students and teachers in the best spot to start school.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Andrews. Ms. Hayes?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Brewer. I pray that we don't have to go there with any of this, like we did last year. Bottom line, nothing's gonna happen with a hybrid or a different set of opening unless by law, the governor declares a state of emergency, right?
That is correct.
So the lawmakers have made this decision. I am most assured that our county, heaven forbid, if we had this, we are well prepared to do this again if we have to. We were one of the leading counties in the state, if not the nation, in developing a pathway to reentry when it was most challenging and all the unknowns. We did a great job. Many other schools, county schools, were modeling their pathway to reentry after us. So we're ready if we have to. We're able and we can. Pray we don't, but this is great. It's a great tool to have, and let's get school started.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes. Anyone else? All right. Seeing none. Next item on the agenda is new business, discussion and action regarding extension of Crown Castle lease for Indian Lake Elementary cell tower. Is there a motion to? Motion approved by Mr. Wise.
Second.
Second by Mr. Wilkerson. Discussion. Ms. Hayes?
Dr. Phillips, do you want to say anything first
No, go ahead.
to address where we are with this?
I'll give a little update, a little briefing about this. Some of you may know, others may remember and may know from just being on campus. But for many years, there's been a cell tower just at the back door, basically, literally at the back door of Indian Lake Elementary School, that provides cell phone coverage and I'm sure other things that they lease out space to on the cell tower, on the tower, predominantly cell phone service. So that was up for a lease renewal. And I think the last lease was 10 or 15 years, I think, ago, something like that. And so we really didn't think we wanted to continue to do that. It's a pretty big tower, and it is right in the back door. So we felt like once that lease expired, we would probably say, hey, let's remove the tower, and you can place the tower somewhere else. And you know, this is a large, it's a large, lot of entities out there that do this, and so we kind of felt like, hey, this is probably what the board wants to do. So probably 2 years ago, I would say, I started trying to communicate that I don't think the board really wants to continue once this lease expires. Really didn't get a lot of movement. Tried a few more times, but long story short, 5 or 6 months ago, we were in conversation with the leaseholder, who does this all over the country. It's a big organization, big business, and we once again said, hey, we don't think the board, you need to find a path forward here, because we realize that you need to make provisions to do something else for cell service for folks that live on the peninsula. That started kind of some movement, not as much as I would have liked to have seen, because I knew that that was going to take a long period of time. So you roll forward here to 6 weeks ago, something like that, 6, 8 weeks ago, and had some email communication, and then also a letter that I think is attached to the board agenda from Mayor Clary. I think they're in the process of doing an RFP maybe for cell tower sites for companies like Crown Castle to respond to that and bid and you know, erect a new cell tower. Obviously, all of that wasn't going to happen before their lease expired with the school district. So we kind of went back and forth. At the end of the day, you know, I think to be, we don't, the school district, you know, our position, we don't want the cell tower there anymore, or at least that's my position. But we also don't want individuals that are on the peninsula to not have the ability to call, use their phone, dial 911. I mean, we don't want that either. The city of Hendersonville, I don't think wants that, but it's certainly, I feel like we've done our part to make everyone aware that we want something else done. I do think that what we have in front of you is the best solution and path forward that I can come up with. It's a 1-year lease extension. I do believe that you know, the city of Hendersonville and Crown Castle all understand that, you know, we're doing this so the citizens have continued cell service without interruption, but it's also a very public way to say we would like for you to make sure that you have everything you need done before this 1-year extension ends, because we intend for it to be taken down from our school property, off our school property, according to this 1-year lease extension.
Thank you, Chairman Brewer. I am the District 1 representative on the Sumner County School Board, so the Indian Lake Peninsula is my area. For the record, before this meeting tonight, I just want to express, I've tried to write all this down, so I'll keep it to the point. I'm extremely frustrated and disappointed that our board is having to even discuss this or vote on this extension of the lease with Crown Castle because the negligence of the city of Hendersonville. Mayor Clary, the buck stops at the leadership. Why are we here? Why are we here discussing this? As Dr. Phillips said, over 2 years ago, conversations began about this cell tower because I was getting, and on top of being disappointed about this conversation, there were people that I reached out to that had been emailing me, discussing, just infuriated with the fact that there is a cell tower behind Indian Lake, the back door of Indian Lake Elementary School. This has been over 2 years ago that these communications, these emails, all documented, forwarded to the district office, that this has been going on. Like I said, parents have contacted me. I've had phone calls, emails. And these parents have stayed engaged in the process of where we are in the lease renewal and not renewing that lease. Our district leadership, the leader that he is, Dr. Phillips, he's taken all the steps, the legal steps with a letter of intent through Todd Presnell, our lawyer, that we do not intend to renew this. That intent was last year, signed, documented. And out of the goodness of Dr. Phillips' heart, he let Mayor Clary know, heads up, we are not renewing this lease. That had to be the first of this year, if not before Christmas last year. We've given them ample time to take the necessary steps to address the cell tower placement, a contract, approval with whoever they go with, or at least the fact they could have started some movement toward this measure. In the mayor's letter, which I hope you all read the request, he stated that the city was not in the cell tower business. Well, he took that quote comment from Dr. Phillips, who had told him long ago, we're not in it, we're getting out of it, we don't want this. Well, I beg to differ with Mayor Clary. The city is in the cell tower business. From his quote about concerned about emergency, this concern about emergency communication. Well, if he was so concerned about emergency communication, he would have taken some action, some steps to take care of this and have coverage for the peninsula. As you can tell, I'm extremely frustrated. All this going on during COVID, which was just another craziness that was happening in our world. Board, I will be voting no on this extension of the cell tower lease as it is proposed right now, a 1-year lease. If you haven't learned by now, and I know my boys would testify if they could be here, I am not an enabler. If you want to call it tough love, call it tough love. When our boys were growing up, and you all had it, children do it, they come to me frantic at the last minute for the science project, for the test, for the paper that's due. Do you know what my line was? Oh no, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? Not my predicament, not my responsibility. I'm not doing the science project for you. There are a lot of tough lessons in those years, but it didn't take them long to get it. When you got the bad grade, when you got the bad report, you figure out, I got to do something different. I got to accept responsibility. I got to plan. I got to prepare, time manage develop a strong work ethic, be leaders, be responsible. It saddens me that the ball is back in our court. Why are we discussing this? I've read over the lease agreement. It's the principle of the matter. And that would be why I would be voting no. It's not that I don't want people to have self-coverage or communication for safety reasons. I thought if we shortened this lease to the end of the year, I'd give them 6 more months. If that was a possibility, to the end of the year. And that would probably be the only way I would vote. Yes. I would also like to see, in some form or fashion, if the board, this passes, that we negotiate a thank you project. The city of Hendersonville takes on for Indian Lake Elementary School. She has been awarded a STEAM, under the STEM accreditation, a STEAM school. I think there ought to be skin in the game for Hendersonville. I think they ought to fund whatever Andy Mitchell would want as a project, an instruction tool, outside classroom, teaching classroom. They ought to do something for Indian Lake Elementary School. It's just a thank you of sure, I'm glad the school board gave us another year. And as Forrest Gump would say, that's all I got to say about that. Done.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes. Mr. Duncan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a few questions. Our issue, or our contracts with Crown Castle, does the city of Hendersonville have emergency communications through this cell tower?
I don't know that they have primary emergency through this.
Just this, because people have cell phones.
It's the way I understand it, but I'm not an expert about it.
Again, I don't want to leave anybody with Peninsula without cell phone coverage. But my issue with this is our working through this issue is with Crown Castle Leasing and all the other people identified on this legal document, this Amendment 2. The city of Hendersonville is nowhere on this document. So I'm kind of scratching my head why Mayor Clary is involved in this conversation at all, besides just a, hey, you've got citizens that are going to be without service. With that, I don't want anybody to be without the cell phone service because we are very tied to our electronic devices, and with what we experienced in COVID, it's been very useful for remote learning. I would like to see something worked out. If this board does want to shorten it, I have no issue with that. But again, I'm still confused why Mr. Clary is involved at all in this process. But again, everything I've read, we're trying to work it out with Crown Castle, and I'd like to thank staff for all their hard work in trying to get that worked out. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan. Ms. Andrews?
So, looking at this as well, obviously there is a lengthy process as far as it, it having to be removed, and then there putting a new tower on at Fire Hall 4. It has, you know, to go through some different processes and so forth and whatnot. So we are currently July. What have they done up until this point? Have they put out an RFP for it? Have they put ordinances in that they are going through currently with BOMA to get the process started? Or are we going to wait another 3 or 4 months before we even start that?
It's my understanding that they put out an RFP at some point, Ms. Andrews, in the past few months, that companies like Crown Castle can respond to. I've not personally seen that, so I don't know what the dates are as far as companies submitting. I know the process that they would have to go through to have the ability, and I don't mean just locally, but on up federal, there's some things that they would probably have to do prior to erecting the tower. But certainly I would think the first step would be the RFP that's out, picking a company, maybe it will be Crown Castle, I don't know. Picking a company and then having a contract with that company. So the way I think, from everything I understand, there will be a contract like the one we have, but it will be with the city of Hendersonville in the future and not the school district. That's what I understand will be happening.
Okay, so to kind of go off of what Mr. Duncan has said, so the contract is currently within the school system. Do we know how long this has been on the school property?
20,
Okay, so it's been there
25 years maybe?
obviously when cell phones were originating, essentially. And so then that is why the original contract then was with the school system, because it was on school property.
That's right.
And we have just explained to them that we don't want to keep this cell tower there, and so the reason I'm assuming then that Mayor Clary is involved is because obviously they want to continue the connection within the peninsula, and so versus us having the agreement, they are going to assume an agreement with somebody and erect their own tower. This tower would then come down.
That's correct.
But he did not include the RFP that they had already sent out with his letter. He did not include that, which that would have been something that I personally think would have been a professional step and something that in good faith to say, you know, I understand here's the process, here's where we already are, we've already done steps X, Y, and Z. You know, obviously this is a process, and so it's gonna take a little bit longer, and we're asking for grace in that. I understand Ms. Hayes' frustration, especially because it appears as though those steps have either not begun or they've not been clearly expressed to us that here is where we are. And it is something that we have stated, this is not something we sprung on them, this is something we said, we are not doing this. And so they drug their feet, and now it's put back on us. And I agree, I do not want to see cell service disrupted in that area. We have schools in that area, we have, you know, families in that area. I know for myself, we don't have a landline at our house, we only have cell service, so I know how that would impact my own family. And for those reasons alone will be the only reason that I will vote in favor, because the sake of families and students within that area and what that means for our schools. However, I would like to see that RFP presented and a timeline presented to the board on their intent for this to be done, because per the last line of this letter, it says, I hope that Sumner County Schools is willing to help by extending Crown Castle's current lease until the new tower is operational. Likely, that will be August 31st, 2022. I don't want this coming back next year and saying, well, we drug our feet and it's gonna be another year.
Yeah. Well, I don't mind asking Mayor Clary for the RFP. I'm sure, obviously, it has some timelines in the RFP because that's what people have responded to. And so I'll ask him for that, and we'll see how much information's in there, and then I'll kind of get an update, try to get an update from him. You know, I think it's pretty clear to everyone at this point, the mayor, Crown Castle, that this is our you know, we're doing this in good faith, but this is our last, the last one that we want to do.
Thank you, Ms. Andrews. Ms. Brown?
I'm totally, I think I've got it straight in my mind after all this. I'm learning things I didn't know. I want to ask you a question. Did you say that we had, as a board, told them 6 months prior? You mentioned that we had told them after 6 months we wouldn't renew it.
No, what I said was, months ago, I told them I didn't think the board wanted to lease that again. So they needed to start looking for an alternate site.
Now that went to the company. What has been said to Clarity? Did he know we were not gonna renew it?
Yes.
He knew? Then we don't go back on our word. I think then that changes my total opinion, because if he's been told and has done nothing, I predict what she said, they'll have 5 million excuses next year. I just think this will drag on and on and on. I think we need to set a date. I'm for giving them 6 months. They can get it done if they want to. You and I both know that. And when you put it out as Clarity been told, also the company had been told that you were not gonna renew it, and then we're giving you 6 months to be, you know, to help you, y'all solve it. And then we've got I think we have to have a finality, because if you don't, it will drag, and I think this is ridiculous. Because honest truth is, I thought my opinion would be, well, it'd just be easier to go ahead. But after hearing this and Clarity not making a move on it at all, my daughter's a mayor. I know how you hop on those things and get them taken care of. This is just looking bad to me down the road if we don't put a date on it. And can I make an amendment?
You can, yeah, absolutely. You know, my thoughts were the lease of a year gives them plenty of time that we don't get caught in a situation where they say, well, we need 2 more months because we couldn't get the FCC clearance, we couldn't get it all done. I think if you shorten your time frame up, you just, I don't know, you create you may create the issue you're trying to avoid. I'd be cautious about that. You've officially, with this board action, it's at the end of the lease, you're giving them 1 year lease period. It has a hard deadline. It has language in there about recording the deed, the language with the registrar. I think you're okay here, I really do. And I'm sure, you know, all of you have said how you felt about the notice and things maybe didn't happen, but I would say my recommendation would be to do what's on the agenda. Let's get the RFP. I can share that with you guys. We can make sure that it has the correct information, the deadline and the time frame that will comply with this. And then if there for some reason is an issue, then we'll address it at that point. But that's what my recommendation would be.
And I respect your recommendation, and I respect that you want this extra year, but to me, they had already been told. If they hadn't already been told, that's the big issue to me. And they've sat and diddled and fiddled. And if they've done that, they're gonna do it afterwards if we give them a year. And we'll be back, I guarantee you, saying, well, y'all wanna give them 3 more months or whatever. We don't have to do this. I just, at this point, am for giving them 6 months. That way it's not an immediate cutoff. They'll get busy and get it solved. For one thing, the cable company wants those calls. It's not like it's only profiting one end. They need that coverage and they need that, so the cable company's gonna get in there and work on it. And I bet Clarity will get busy and work on it. He should have been working on it 6 months ago. And that really upsets me that we've already stated we were not gonna renew it. And then to give them a whole other year, I just think is wrong. I think giving them 6 months is a big gift. And I just think that we're more likely to get it done than we are if we give them a year. That's my opinion.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Duncan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize for making a second appearance, but having spent a career as an engineer and working in a utility that's regulated, and also working for a utility where your procurement process goes through a government office, I have to agree with Dr. Phillips. Thank you. You're going to shoot yourself in the foot with 6 months. And if you read the contract, it explicitly says no additional extensions of this agreement shall be granted. I think with this debate tonight and that kind of bold statement in a contract, I don't think we'll have an issue. I think we're going to send a clear and concise message to both the mayor of Hendersonville as well as this particular company that they need to move forward, and they need to move forward swiftly. Again, the wheels of government move slowly. We've all experienced that. So at this point, I don't think we're in any dire emergency with this tower falling on our elementary school. So let's be patient, push this out a year for our fellow citizens out on the peninsula, and let's move forward with it clear and concise. They need to get it done. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan. Mr. Wise?
Unless I did not hear correctly, I believe what I heard Dr. Phillips say was that I told them I don't think our board wants to renew. I don't think he said our board is not going to renew. So is that correct, Dr. Phillips? You told them that you thought we did not want to renew. You didn't tell them that we're not going to renew, correct? Okay, I want to make that clear. I will, with some hesitancy, I will vote to approve this because I'm not gonna let I may be driving down whatever street is down through there and need cell phone service, and boom, I don't have it. I'm not going to let children, innocent citizens suffer due to anybody's ineptness. Like Mr. Duncan just said, we have a firm deadline. This is it. You have 1 year, because next year, whether you come back and ask us in August of next year, we need 3 more months, tough. You had your year's notice, everybody knows, so let's vote.
Thank you, Mr. Wise. Ms. Hayes?
Chairman Brewer, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me.
Sorry.
Let me go with Mr. Gregory.
If we voted not to approve this, what all would it knock out?
My understanding is the majority of the cell phone coverage on the peninsula.
Say that again, sir.
Cell phone coverage on the peninsula.
On this. I mentioned this to Mr. Langford one day last week, that it's a family situation where our daughter went to a church camp. It was very much back in the northern part of Allen County, Kentucky. And they did not have cell phone. Well, something came up. She was a counselor. Something came up that she needed to notify us about. And she had to, I don't know where she had to go. because there was no cell phone service. We live with a cell phone now. I mean, I don't know how many of you still have a land phone. I do. I don't understand why I do, except Comcast said it was cheaper. But I also have a cell phone too. But I will say it's a great handicap without cell phone services. I doubt if many, I bet 50% of the families on the peninsula do not have land phones. Would you agree? And I'm just guessing, it may be 20%, it may be 80%, but I'm saying half probably do not. Oh, by the way, would it affect the internet, any in the schools? It wouldn't, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Gregory. Ms. Hayes?
Thank you, Chairman Brewer. Dr. Phillips, would this even have come up for a board vote if this had just run its course, the contract ended, you signed the letter of intent, this is just business as usual in the district office? Would we have even addressed the ending of the contract, or only because we had a request to extend to cover the inadequacy of the city? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes. Seeing none, I'll take just a minute to say a few things on it. You know, Mr. Wise and I deal with real estate business. We deal with contracts and things all the time, and things that don't go well. You can choose to be punitive to people and kind of make a mess sometimes. I've been on this board. By the time 2024 gets here, and this term ends, I will have been on this board 16 years. We've been wanting to get rid of that thing ever since I've been on this board. It's a horrible place for it, but there again, you got to have cell service back there. So I don't think we need to come off as punitive. I don't care whether the mayor gets hold of it or who gets hold of it. You know, it'd probably be a good idea to, you know, get the director of economic development down there a hold of it and, you know, see what can get done. But whoever gets hold of it, I think with this, what we're sending them, we're drawing a line in the sand. So look, it's been here 25 years now. It's time for somebody else to take it over. We don't want it there. We don't want to disrupt your service out there, but somebody needs to pick up the ball and run with it, because on this date, on that letter, the school board's done with it. And as you know, for Ms. Brown, if they come back next year and say, well, we need a couple extra months or whatever, you know, we have the right to vote no at that time. So I would like to see 6 months done, but I think giving them a year would be, you know, we're stepping out and saying, okay, we're giving you all we're going to give you now. We're giving you ample time. If that's not enough time, we're sorry. We've given you 25 years. But I will be voting yes for the year on it, and with that, I'll call the vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed?
May I make a statement on my vote?
Sure.
Thank you, Chairman Brewer. We're voting for the 1 year, correct? For the record, I stated my frustration, my disappointment. And for those parents who have contacted me, had conversation over and over again about the cell tower behind the school, and it has a lot more to do with just the optics. And I'm not even going to go there. The city's going to have their hands full of finding a place to put it. For the greater good, of this community and of my district, I will agree to vote yes for the 1 year I'm sitting down voting yes, but I'm standing up on the inside voting no. I want you to know that. I vote yes.
All right, motion carries unanimous. Next item on the agenda, discussion and interaction regarding bids for technology infrastructure at Liberty Creek Elementary School and Liberty Creek High School. Dr. Phillips.
Right. If you guys remember back when we were doing the planning for Liberty Creek Elementary and Liberty Creek High School, we talked about how we were going to, in this particular school project, we were going to do the technology a little bit differently. You remember that? Because we wanted to wait until the end of the project to buy some of the things that technology obviously would have changed 3 or 4 times from 2 years ago until we actually purchased things here in the next few months for the school. So you've got all types of things that fall into that category, whether it's security cameras, low voltage speakers, all types of things like that. I think you have a list on your, so you can kind of read through what all's involved in that. So this is all just normal, what we'd planned to do. It's for all of those technology and security items that we were planning to purchase. This comes from bond proceeds, and it's all part of what we had budgeted. It's right in line with everything that we'd planned.
Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Mr. Duncan, second by Ms. Andrews. Discussion by Ms. Andrews.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate or clarify that in this it says Liberty Creek Elementary and Liberty Creek High School. We're speaking specifically about the actual building itself and so forth, and that when we do, so that the middle school, who will be housed in the high school for a year, we're not gonna not have technology for them, and then when we do the standalone, we'll do a similar process for that building.
It's for the whole building.
Right, I just wanna-
When we run in on the front end, this will be for the entire building and campus that's built out now.
Right.
And then the middle school, the actual building, parking lot area, all of that will be in a similar package like this at that point in time when we're at the same point in the process.
Right, like we're not taking this equipment and
No,
putting it in
no,
that
no,
building.
no.
This is
No, this will-
technically, we're building it for the high school long-term, that the middle school will be in short-term.
That's correct.
Thank you, Ms. Andrews. Mr. Duncan.
Just a curiosity question. I understand what a vaping sensor would be. What's an anti-bullying sensor?
It's new. They've started technology now. They've started putting them in stairwells predominantly. But I think they go off of, I think it's off of keywords, phrases, and strength of sound, I think. But don't hold me to that.
Okay.
I'm not an expert about it.
That's more advanced than I was thinking. I was thinking just watering and hanging around too long. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan. Seeing no other discussion, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Next item on the agenda, discussion and interaction regarding bids for the soccer facility at Station Camp High School.
Motion to reject those bids.
Motion to reject the bids by Mr. Wise. Is there a second? Second, Ms. Bachman. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Next item on the agenda, discussion and interaction regarding a revision to policy 6.200, student attendance. Motion approved by Mr. Wise.
Need to waive second. And waive second.
And your motion, okay, and the motion's made to approve and waive the second reading. Second by, actually I got Ms. Bachman here for the second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Next item, discussion and interaction regarding amendments to the general purpose budget. Is there a motion? Motion approved by Ms. Bachman.
Second.
Second by Mr. Wilkerson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Next item on the agenda, discussion and interaction regarding amendments to the federal budget. Is there a motion? Motion to approve, there I go again. Motion to approve by Ms. Hayes, second by,
Second.
I got Mr. Wise coming on the bar just for you.
Guess I got-
Second by Mr. Wise. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is discussion for study session items. Mr. Johnson?
We got a little derailed with the opening of school, so this next study session should be the last rodeo for all existing policies for the policy manual, and then we'll finally have wrapped up that and continue another journey. Or, you know, maybe keep on this one. We'll find out.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Next item on the agenda is communications from board members. Let's start with Mr. Wilkerson tonight. Mr. Wilkerson?
Just keep Wyatt and Braden's families in your thoughts and prayers. Such tragedy.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Wilkerson. Mr. Gregory? You have nothing? Okay. Ms. Brown? You have nothing either? Mr. Wise?
Well, I do. Yes, the family in Westmoreland, we do want to extend our thoughts and prayers to them. That I cannot imagine, and the family, and it even extends, from what I understand, to Oakmont with that family. So my heart's heavy there. I want to, the last several years, in another couple of weeks or so, 3 or 4 days before school starts, I start posting on social media, please be aware, Monday, Tuesday, whatever the day is, buses will be back on the road. Please be aware of that. Just because now everybody's accustomed to going through those school zones at whatever mile per hour they go, which is not 15. We have all of our flashers, at least all of them that I go through, are big and bright and working. Now, does that mean I need to give a shout out to Mr. Brown and his crew? Well, probably so. But I would just like to ask every board member on your social media outlets to start 2 or 3 days ahead of time and just alerting folks, hey, school starts Tuesday. Buses are going to be on the road. Children are going to be crossing the roads. Children are going to be getting on and getting off of buses. So let's just be aware. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wise. Mr. Duncan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have anything really formal. I just want to say my heart goes out to the families. We've had issues in our recent past here in our community in Gillisville and White House, Westmoreland, White House. It's a horrible tragedy. Our students have been through a very odd 2 years, 18 months with a pandemic, and faced things that as a child I never had to face. So it's exciting to me to look at a school year where we're trying to get some semblance of normalcy back. And I'm really excited for our teachers, for our principals, and for the kids. I really am. I don't have anything other than that, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan. Ms. Andrews? Thank you. Ms. Bachman?
Other than just to echo all the comments that are made so far, heart and prayer goes out to Westmoreland and Medicine Creek. It's a terrible tragedy. But I'm so glad that we're going to have the schools back and normal. And I know my grandkids are glad to be back, and I'll be glad for them to be back. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bachman. Ms. Hayes?
Yes. I've probably said enough words tonight. I don't usually talk that much. Of course, my heartfelt sympathies to the families. Wyatt and Braden's family. I'm just so sorry. The whole community is grieving the loss of two young little fellas. I think I neglected in June to give a shout out to Indian Lake Elementary School for receiving its STEAM designation, its accreditation. This is hard work to get to this level, to be recognized by the state. And STEAM adds the arts to the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. You add the arts. So they did a phenomenal job at the big reveal to the students and the staff, and kept it a secret. So that was a great day. So just so proud. In Sumter County, we have 7 schools out of 61 in the state of Tennessee that are STEM accredited. Burris Elementary, Indian Lake, Jack Anderson, Oakmont, Portland East Middle, and Station Camp Elementary and Union Elementary. Like I said, this is hard work to get this accreditation, and these teachers and students, it's a community effort, the families, to receive this accreditation. I want to give a shout out to Scott Langford.
Yes.
He has been, he's a finalist and Supervisor of the Year of the state of Tennessee. There were a couple of credentials or things that you had to show, to demonstrate. Demonstrate a record of implementing innovative programs and managing and motivating students and faculties. I would say that Scott Langford gets an A+ in both of those categories. So proud of you and grateful that you are a leader in our county and don't plan on going anywhere. I know that once you receive the State Supervisor of the Year, everybody's gonna be looking for you. So I think you have a interview. What's the next step, Scott?
Interview in August.
Okay, so we're praying for you, we're rooting for you. And we know we got the best, whether the state acknowledges it or not, we know. Saturday night, I attended the Bison Bash. So I was at Station Camp High School for their football kickoff. My husband is an auctioneer on the side, and we had so much fun. They raised a lot of money and a great community, just walking in the door. I want y'all to know, I met 3 families, and they aren't from here. So 2-3 years ago, we've got families that were from North Carolina, Wisconsin, and California. So we got a great place here, and everybody's finding out about it in Sumter County. So it was a great night. I just love community coming together like that. The excitement, football season's coming, but just kids are excited about being back in school. Just got to talk to so many great young athletes and their families. So it was a fun night. I'm just so proud of this community. So, thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes. I'd like to say congratulations to Scott Langford as well. I read that, and I'm like, yes, absolutely. We do have a great school system going here, being in the real estate business and people coming in from all over the country because of the school systems here is quite amazing. When they walk in the office door and say, we've heard about Sumner County schools, can you help me find a house here, please? It's absolutely fantastic. I just met our new transportation director, so I've forgotten your name, I'm sorry, but we welcome you and glad to have you here. Looking forward to the first few days of school to make sure that you don't leave us. And I ask all the parents to be, we're getting ready to start school back, and that's when my phone rings mostly is, we have, it's a huge system, and while it runs squeaky clean most of the time, there's always something that could happen. So we're going to be watching that and try to make sure that that's minimal. But when it does happen, be patient with us, and we'll get it worked out because we got a great staff here to get it done with. And with that, hope y'all have a blessed evening and drive careful on the way home. We are adjourned.